When people ask me for suggestions on what they can cook, meals they can make ahead of time, usually at the top of that list is lasagna. Lasagna is a simple dish to make, doesn't take a lot of time to prepare, it's easy to make OMS friendly, and best of all, you can make a large portion in advance, have it during the week, or freeze whatever you don't eat right away and just have it again later. We're going to make an eggplant and mushroom lasagna today, although you can really use any kind of ingredient that you have on hand. It doesn't really make a whole lot of difference, but what's key is to have a good tomato sauce on hand, something that's a little bit rustic, but also at the same time a little on the runny side. And the other key element, which we're going to make for you, is a bechamel. And a bechamel is typically made with butter and milk, obviously not where we want to go, but we're going to do it with olive oil and rice milk and get that started and start making the lasagna here. And the whole process, once you have the ingredients in place, really only takes about 10 minutes to prepare, maybe 25, 30 minutes in the oven, and there you have it. Fresh lasagna you can enjoy all week long. So let's get started. The first thing we want to do is get our bechamel going. Now you don't want to work with real high heat here. Something medium is just about right. We're going to go with about 40 grams of olive oil. Just get that heated. You don't want it again real hot, but just enough to incorporate the flour when we put that in. I think it works better in a pot rather than in a pan because you're going to be stirring quite a bit and we want to keep everything contained here. So, when we got that oil nice and warm, just go ahead and get the flour in there all at once. Now I'm using a mixture of regular flour and rice flour. The rice flour adds a little bit more starch, but it's also important not to work with too high of a heat. Just get that all in, we'll give it a little stir, incorporate it all. It should come together rapidly, almost into a kind of a ball form. Once everything has come together really nicely, we're going to just slowly start adding the milk, just a little at a time to begin with. What should happen is this will thicken up right away, and we just keep stirring it. If you don't stir it at this point, you're going to lump up, and that's not nice. So just stir until everything comes together nice and smooth, just about like that there. And then we're going to give it just a little bit more milk. And we're going to just keep doing this until all of the milk is incorporated. After about 5 minutes of stirring, your sauce is going to get that really nice thick consistency, and that's what we're looking for. We don't want it much more thicker than that, but if you're going to keep it on the stove, it will continue to thicken. If that happens, just go ahead and add just a little bit of milk. You don't need a lot just to loosen it up, and that's it. Now, the bechamel can actually be made in advance. You could make this even a day in advance, keep it refrigerated, and then just bring it up to a warm temperature just before we're ready to start making our lasagna. As you're stirring it, the other key part of making a good bechamel is making sure it's well seasoned. I give it a little bit of salt, a little bit at the beginning, after I taste it a little bit, and then try to season it up. And you may want to give it a little bit of pepper, or even nutmeg if that's your preference. It doesn't need a lot of seasoning, just enough to give it a little bit of flavor. There you have it. I am really happy with the consistency of this bechamel. It should just kind of fall off that spoon as you're holding it up. Make sure you give it a little bit of a taste. That's just perfect. And I think now we're pretty much ready to get our lasagna started. So we're just going to get that off the heat. You may want to let that cool 20 minutes at maximum. It doesn't need to be real hot. What may happen is it may have a little skin that forms on the top. That's not a big issue at all. Just give it a little stir. And if it gets a little too thick, give it 1 or 2 spoons of milk. Bring it right back. Great. So when we're ready to start building lasagna, we just get our dish out. Now I've just given the dish just a very, very light coating of oil. That's just important to help prevent anything from sticking too much to your dish. We're going to start building by just adding maybe a spoon and a half of the bechamel on the bottom. We're going to loosen that up with just a little bit of milk. And we're just going to coat the bottom of the pan. This is an important process. In essence, what we're doing is we're using pasta sheets which are raw, and we need a lot of moisture in the oven to actually cook the pasta. And so this is going to help that pasta at the bottom layer completely cook. Right, once we got that all sorted, we're just ready to start building. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to layer our pasta right onto that bechamel. They can overlap a little bit, and if your pan doesn't fit your sheet exactly, just go ahead and break off a bit. So if you get little pieces, don't worry about that. We'll just pop them right in here and just try to get everything covered as much as possible. Once we have a nice layer of lasagna, we're going to give that just a little bit more bechamel. You don't need to be excessive here, just enough to moisten it really. And we're going to put our first layer of vegetables. Now we're just using simply grilled eggplant here. That's all that's necessary. They're actually cold. We did this ahead of time. You can also use what you have on hand. And once you're satisfied and everything is covered here in the pan, we're just going to go ahead and start adding a little bit of tomato. The tomato, we don't need to have a huge amount, but just enough to cover the eggplant here. And then we're going to go ahead and build another layer. Right, that's looking pretty good. Now we're just going to go ahead and start building our next layer. And our next layer is just going to be mushrooms. We just sauteed these mushrooms a little bit, no oil at all, not necessary, and just seasoned them with a little bit of oregano. Just give it a good layer of mushroom. Just make sure you cover up all of the pasta here. Give it a little bit of flattening with your hands. And then we're just going to go with a little bit more tomato sauce. And there you go. And now we're ready to build our final layer. So just as before, go ahead and give it a good, even covering of pasta. Just slightly push that down. And now, with our bechamel, it's been sitting a bit. It's also gotten a little bit thick. What we want to do on the last layer is get a nice loose bechamel. So give it 2-3 spoons of milk just to get it nice and runny. And so we're looking for that kind of consistency there. The other thing I like to do at this point is I give it a little bit of nutritional yeast. This will give it a little cheesiness just on the top layer, which I find fantastic in the lasagna. So maybe 2.5 spoonfuls of nutritional yeast. Give it a good mix. And now we're just ready to coat the top layer with this new bechamel mix. So we just want to smoothen that out, make sure all the little crevices are full. And to complete the lasagna preparation, we're just going to take a little bit of our tomato sauce and we're going to give it some dollops. We don't want to coat it completely with tomato. We just want to give it a little bit of a spotty look, if you will. You can just kind of take your spoon, smoothing it out a little bit, leaving bits of bechamel exposed. And there you go. That's the preparation. Very simple to do. And now all we need to do is get it into the oven. It's a relatively hot oven, around 190, 200 degrees centigrade. And we're going to go about 25-30 minutes, just until a knife goes easily through the lasagna. There you have it. Lasagna under an hour. We've had it in the oven for about a half hour. We've let it cool now for about another half hour, which is really important. Let everything sort of settle, makes it much easier to cut, and which is what we're going to do just right now, and go ahead and give it a try. Oh, the smells are wonderful. Freshly baked pasta is always just such a wonderful experience. And there we have it. First layer, always a little bit of a challenge. It's always really my favorite portion. Try to get all those layers all at once. And we just set it right into this bowl. And there we have it. Completely OMS safe lasagna. All we have left to do now, just give it a try. So let's go ahead and eat it. Really fabulous. All of the flavors, very rich, delicious, very warming. I think you'll love it.